Hello, welcome to the live stream. Welcome to the live stream. Good to be back. I am live streaming on April 2nd, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 2025. It's live stream number 10. I put out a video today, a pre-recorded video. It premiered a few hours ago. It was a interview slash debate with Elijah Moore. He's another YouTuber. We talked about subjectivism, ethics of objectivism, the politics of objectivism. So you can check that out. So this is the first time I've put out two videos on one day. Well, this is the second video, this live stream. So it's a new era. And also it was streamed or it premiered earlier than usual. So I premiered it at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. Normally I would uh, premiere a video at maybe noon or in the evening if it's a weekday, maybe earlier on a weekend because it's not during work hours if it's at noon. But I wanted to try a new time today, fit a little better with my schedule, and maybe it would work better for some other people. And it turned out there were, I think it got up to 7 viewers at once at the most, which is actually, excuse me, which is actually more than some of the other live streams I've done. So maybe it is a better time for some people. It could be better for some Europeans. I think one European came by, someone from Sweden, um, or maybe people are on lunch break on the East Coast. But maybe I'll do that time more often in the future. And this is also probably earlier than most of my live streams, 1 Pacific. So it's usually I'll stream in the evening unless it's on the weekends. But we'll see what kind of attendance we get today. So I titled this with my usual title. I have a default title, which is chat/debate with an Ayn Rand fan and philosophy PhD. But I also added, and I typically change the title afterwards, after I find out what I talk about, because I don't really have a scheduled set of topics, but after the stream, I will retitle, I'll change the default title to something more specific to what was discussed during the stream. Today, I added to the starting title live calls question mark and Cory Booker video question mark because I thought I might. Well, it's always a question as to whether I take any live calls. I usually don't have a scheduled live call, so it's uncertain whether anyone's going to decide to call in. Um, but also, I watched a video recently. It was a video of Cory Booker, a senator. I don't know what state he's from. Maybe New Jersey. Um, should look that up. He was giving a speech, a marathon speech, and yeah, New Jersey. Just Googled that. He was giving a speech recently, and there was a compilation of clips from that speech, which I came across in my YouTube feed. And during part of it, he was talking about Medicare and Medicaid and cuts that Republicans want to make to that. And I thought, oh, that might make a good thing to comment on in my next live stream. I want to, it's partly just a test of doing reactions to videos. That's not something I've done on a live stream before, where I share my screen and you can see the video and then I react to it in real time. I've done reaction videos before where it's pre-recorded, but I haven't done it on a live stream before. So it's partly just to test that feature. Um, and I thought that might make a good thing to comment on. Maybe just a few minutes of it. The whole compilation of clips is over 30 minutes, but there's only a few minutes towards the beginning that I think I might comment on. I also thought of that as a something to do in case there aren't any callers or people engaged in the chat. And maybe as it would be a good way to start the stream actually, because usually it takes a while for people to get engaged, and I have no idea how many people are going to show up, especially at this unusual time. So maybe I'll start reacting to that video in a minute. But as a reminder, there is a link in the chat to the Zoom call. So I have that pinned. If anyone wants to call in, feel free to click on that link. Or you can just engage by text chat. I don't see any text chats right now. Um, but hopefully there will be some later. I did get a DM from someone on Facebook asking me a question about something, and I was thinking maybe I should DM that person, and instead of answering his question in the DM, ask him if he wants to come on the live stream and discuss it. So I put out announcements on Facebook and X before the stream started. Maybe that'll help get some people to show up. And I think I will be on at least for half an hour. I think that's roughly what I said last time. There wasn't much engagement in the beginning, and I said I'd be on for at least half an hour, and then um, if there's more engagement, then I'll stay on for longer. But um, oh, I also just turned the stream. Well, I didn't turn the stream off, but I just left the stream for a while last time after it got up to like the half hour mark, and there still weren't any people engaging in the chat or calling in. I said I'm just going to turn off my mic and my camera, and I'll still be here, but I'm not going to be talking continuously unless there's people who want to engage. So I just check the chat every few minutes, and then finally, one person in particular, started chatting, and then decided to call in. So and that was my call with Megan Ribbons. You can see that in my last live stream. So I might do something like that today, but I think at the beginning I don't have like a monologue prepared, but I thought instead of that, I could do something like a reaction to a video. So let me actually, I'll take a quick look at my list and see if there's anything else I wanted to say before I go to that video. Oh, yeah, just a few things. So little updates on what I've been reading, learning about recently, which I typically do an update on at the start of streams. I read more about Ukraine, and I finished the article on Zelensky. So I've now read about all the Ukrainian presidents in the Wikipedia articles on him and the others. And then I decided to switch back to my study of Middle Ages England. I had been working my way through the Middle Ages, and I was up to, I think I last mentioned William the Conqueror, who conquered England in 1066. He came across the English Channel from France, well, in particular from Normandy. He was the Duke of Normandy, and he went across the Channel and conquered England and became the King of England. And then I read about his son, who was the next king, William II, also known as William Rufus, and his other son, Robert Curthose, who was the next Duke of Normandy. So the when William the Conqueror died in 1087, he split up his realm. So he left to one son, Robert, the Duchy of Normandy in France, and he left to his other son, William II, the Kingdom of England. And then when that son died, uh, another son, a third son, Henry, became the next king of England. So Henry the First. So right now I'm reading about Henry the First, who was king in England starting in the year 1100 and continuing till 1135, I believe, around then. So that's what I've been reading about recently. Okay. And I think yeah, I'll just leave it there for my updates. All right, let me see if I can now start this video. Or after I see if there's any chat messages. No, it doesn't look like it. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can share my screen. And I also need to share the sound. And it would be nice to get some feedback on whether you can hear that. Well, I guess I can test that on my phone. Yeah, so I should be able to test myself whether the sound is coming through okay. Okay. Let me just move a tab. Make sure I have the right things showing when I share it. Okay. And gotta cue this video up to the right points. Okay, I think I have it at the right spot. So let me now try to share. Share sound. Optimize for the best video sharing experience. What is that? Okay, I think I'm going to ignore that for now. All right, I just told it to share. And I wonder if I'm going to still be visible in the corner. Okay, yeah, there we go. Looks like, and as soon as I do that, I see a couple more people showed up. I wonder if doing a reaction video like this is going to bring in more people, just like because visually it might be more appealing. to see some other content that I'm engaging with as opposed to just me taking up the whole screen. Um, Maybe this is more engaging. All right, so let me just do a sound test. And I'm just going to play. It's at the point where I want to start it at 1 minute and 29 seconds. And I might run it back after I just see if the sound is coming through okay. All right, so let me play like maybe 30 seconds of it or so.
The first area I want to talk about is Medicaid, Medicare, and healthcare, as my constituents spoke to. I don't need to tell anyone the importance of healthcare to humanity. Without our health, we would not be able to do anything else. We would not be able to provide for our
Okay, good. Looks like the sound worked. Um, Excellent. So now I'm going to rewind it back, and you can confirm that it sounds okay on your end as well uh, in the chat. Just go a couple seconds and then unmute so it's okay. Um, all right, good. Got another person. All right, so I'm going to play a few well, maybe like a minute of this, and then I'm going to pause it and make some comments. Okay, so here we go. This is Cory Booker, and I don't know if you can see the in the screen there. It says it's the bulwark here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. I'm pointing in the upper right. That's just the channel. I don't know much about that channel, but anyways, they presented this mashup, they call it, of clips from Cory Booker's marathon speech on healthcare cuts. So let me play a little bit of this for us.
The first area I want to talk about is Medicaid, Medicare, and healthcare, as my constituents spoke to. I don't need to tell anyone the importance of healthcare to humanity. Without our health, we would not be able to do anything else. We would not be able to provide for our families, spend time with our loved ones, do all of the things that make life worth living. That's why I'm going to stand here and explain to people what's going on and how our healthcare programs are at risk and being undermined. The Trump administration and Republicans in Congress are right now discussing how to cut these programs in a way of putting those savings either into tax cuts for the rich. I say either because they're going to be putting them in the tax cuts for the rich, but those tax cuts, as we know, are still going to blow massive trillion-dollar holes in our deficits. They are trying to gut Medicaid and Medicare programs on which nearly a third of our country rely, all to pay for those tax cuts.
Okay. So, yes, healthcare is important, but that doesn't mean we need programs like Medicare and Medicaid. These are programs that get their funding by coercing people. So we are forced to pay, to give up some of our pay, our income. If you get a paycheck, there are these things called FICA taxes, I believe. And I don't know what the percentage of it is. There's a certain percentage that's taken out for Social Security and another percentage that's taken out for Medicare. And if you work for an employer, there's also the same amount that's taken out. I think it's like 12 something percent total, 12 point something percent total for Social Security and a couple percent, or like 4% or something for Medicare. Um, I don't remember the numbers exactly. But anyways, this is money that's forcibly taken out of your paycheck. You are required to pay these taxes, or else eventually you'll end up in jail. Or if you're an independent contractor, you're not working for some employer, then you're responsible for the entire 15% or however much it adds up to, as opposed to half of that you're being taken from your employer and then half from you as an employee. You pay the entire amount if you're self-employed. So there's there's nothing wrong with saying healthcare is important and people are going to have all kinds of problems if they don't have healthcare. But that shouldn't be packaged together with the claim that therefore we need to coerce people via these programs and these taxes to pay for healthcare. That should be left up to the voluntary decisions of individuals. I shouldn't be forced to pay for anyone else's healthcare or their retirement if we want to throw in Social Security there. That should be left up to me to decide. If I want to voluntarily help you, then I can do that. But there's no justification for forcing me to pay for someone else's healthcare. Now, the thing that made me initially want to comment on this video was actually not the what I was just talking about, which is a pretty common point I've made in many of my videos. But for anyone who um, isn't familiar with my perspective, there's a little taste of it. I'm in favor of freedom, which means people should not be coerced, for example, to pay for other people's retirement or medical care. So these are coercive programs, and I think coercing people is immoral. So if anyone out there wants to debate me on that, feel free to do so. You can call in or say something in the chat. But the other point that was made here at the end of this segment by Booker is that these programs are potentially going to be gutted, he says, to pay for tax cuts. And I think he adds later for the rich, for billionaires. But tax cuts are not something that need to be paid for. Tax, what is tax? What are tax cuts? What that means is you are taking less of people's money away from them. You're confiscating less of their money, or you're looting them less. That's what a tax cut is. But you don't have to pay for that. Not looting someone is free. You don't have to pay to not loot somebody, to not confiscate their wealth. You pay for a good or a service. Not not coercively taking someone's money is not the same as paying them for something. So I think it's a misuse, a distortion of language to say that tax cuts need to be paid for. Now, so if we don't coercively take people's money and give it to other people, that doesn't mean that that anyone is necessarily not going to have health care. It just means they have to find a way to pay for it without coercing people, without parasitically using other people's money to support themselves. And you could say the same thing about food. Like imagine there was a food program. I guess there is a food program with something like SNAP. I think that's the name of it now. Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, maybe something like that. Or I guess in the Soviet Union, they had bread lines. I guess the government was in control of dispensing the food to some extent, at least. It was run by the government. But if you take away, like, what do you say about the Soviet Union? Oh, we should keep the government in charge of the food program. Otherwise, or we should keep the U.S. in charge of something like SNAP. Otherwise, people aren't going to have any way to uh, feed themselves. No, it just means they'll have to find another way. They'll have to earn some money and pay for it themselves, or maybe get someone to help them out for a while if they're very poor. But dispensing with these programs doesn't mean that um, food or healthcare is going to disappear. It just means you need to find another way to get it, a moral way, because it's not going to be one that's reliant on coercing other people. It's going to be one that respects other people's freedom and their rights. And there are things like private charity, but I think the vast majority of people won't need private charity. It's very easy to support yourself in a free society, one that leaves people free to work and reap the fruits of their labor, where you don't have things like minimum wage laws that price people out of the labor market. Um, if you did not have minimum wage laws, it would be easy for everyone to find a job and they could afford to support themselves. And not necessarily everyone is going to be able to support themselves at the same level. There's not going to be going to be equality in terms of income, but that's okay. I don't think we should aim to make everyone equal in terms of their income. So maybe you'll have to eat ramen noodles for a while, something very cheap, um, canned beans, but that's that's better, that's more honorable, that's more moral than putting a gun to someone's head or outsourcing your dirty work and having the government put a gun to someone's head on your behalf and threaten to take them into jail if they don't fork over some of their money, which they've earned, which they have a right to give to you. Okay. Now, I only played about a minute of this, and I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to comment on in it. Let me switch over to another screen to see if I have any. Oh yeah, I made a few more notes, but I don't know that I need to play the video to make these additional comments. So one thought was just, I think that it makes sense to phase out programs like Social Security, which people have been paying into for years or decades, and many people have become reliant on that. And I don't think it's right to immediately just overnight abolish a program like that. I think it's better to phase it out over time. And like people who are already retired or just about to retire, close to 65, maybe they should get the full amount that they were originally promised. But people who are just starting to work, 18-year-olds, for instance, um, I think it makes sense to not give them any Social Security money, but also they shouldn't have to pay in any to the system since they're not going to get anything out. And then people who are somewhere in the middle, maybe you're in your 40s, maybe those people should get 50% of what they were originally promised, but their taxes also can be phased out at the same time. So they're paying 50% of what they used to be paying because they're not going to be getting as much. I don't know what good numbers would be. I don't know that there's any perfect way to do it, but something along those lines so that over time, maybe over a generation or two, the whole thing can be gone with as little pain as possible. And maybe you could do something like that with Medicare as well. you give the full benefits that people are now getting if they're already in retirements, and if they're just if they're like 18 or younger, then say they won't get any government Medicare, and by the same token, they won't be taxed at all to fund their own medical or health needs. They'll just have to be responsible and set aside money for their own medical needs right now, just as they do for any other thing like food, clothing, entertainment. People need to be responsible. And then maybe if you're somewhere in the middle, you're in your 40s, maybe you'll get a portion of the benefits you were initially promised, but not all of it. And by the same token, you won't be taxed as much. Maybe you'll be taxed half as much as you were before. Something like that could be a way to transition out of these programs to minimize the damage. And I think with the greater freedom, people will be much better. There will be much better. If you have a free market for any good, I think that's going to increase innovation, and over time, it reduces prices. Right now, I think the price system is all messed up. It's so complicated, like how your bills, understanding your medical bills, because they have to go through insurance, and it's so convoluted. It's not like you walk into a grocery store and you just know the price of milk and you see how much. Okay, do I want to buy that or not? Um, it's you, it's not. It's much harder to make decisions because there's no clear price structure in the medical health care market. Um, it's so convoluted, and that needs to change. Okay, so I think I might leave it there for this video. So let me stop the screen share. And I'm glad it worked. It looks like it worked. I'm going to play it back later, see how it sounds, but I think it worked okay. Okay, so um, testing the delay now. There's like a, okay, it looks like about a 15-second delay between when I'm talking and when you hear me through YouTube. So there's one other thing I will do, which is I'm going to DM this person who wrote to me on Facebook and see if you let him know I'm live streaming now, and see if he wants to join me here. So, just, hey, I'm live streaming. Might you be interested in coming on to discuss this via Zoom? There's a link in the chat, in the live chat on YouTube. There's a link to the Zoom call. I'm just reading how I'm editing this as I'm doing it. Okay, and now let me just send him the link to the YouTube in case he hasn't seen that. Whoa, what is that? Oh, I gotta mute my YouTube volume. Okay. Here's a link to the stream. Okay, so I just sent this person who asked me a question on Facebook a link to the stream, so maybe he'll come on and we can do a Zoom call, live call. Let me take a quick look at X, see if any replies have come into my announcement. Somebody retweeted my announcement. That was nice. Okay. Don't see any chat messages yet. Let me take a quick look at my YouTube analytics. See if there's anything interesting going on there. Just got some more people checking out my interview slash debate with Elijah Moore, which I published earlier today. Okay, so I see people have been dropping by, popping in, popping out. Got 4 people right now, but no one's chatting yet or calling in. And and I did my little test on by sharing that Cory Booker video, and it looked like the sound worked, so that's good. Um, I could, I was thinking I could search for new videos, but I'm not sure I want to do that. That might get kind of messy, waste time. And also, I don't want to violate copyrights. So I only want to be showing something if I'm actually commenting on it. And it might take a while to find a video that I think is good to comment on. And I don't want to just play it and then decide I don't have anything or don't want to say anything about it. And then risk having some kind of copyright violation. I also was so I think if I'm going to do another video, I should figure that out in advance. Also, I was thinking maybe I could scroll through some Facebook comments or Twitter comments, like maybe replies to posts I've made and comment on the comments. I also don't know what the rules are regarding that, like if there's any copyrights danger of scrolling through Facebook or Twitter comments. I kind of doubt it, but I want to research that a little more before I actually do it. I could just read them to you and not display them on the screen, and I guess that would be a way to get around that worry. Um, but anyways, I got a few likes on one of my tweets. So, since no one's engaging in chat or calling in, I think maybe what I'll do is just turn off my camera and mic for a while and then check back in a few minutes, maybe every few minutes, and see if there's anyone who wants to engage. So I'm not ending the stream. I'm just gonna turn off my mic and camera until there's some engagement, until and unless people start to engage. So see a few people here. Say hello or something if you want me to stick around. Otherwise, I'll give you it's 1:39 right now, Pacific time, and 35 seconds to be exact. So let's see. I'll wait for another. I'll wait for 2 minutes. So like at 1:42. If I don't see any engagement, oh, I was just about to say if I don't see any engagement, I'm gonna turn off my mic and camera. And then I see a message from Audrey. Hello, Audrey. Nice to see you. Um, I saw you made a comment in a previous live stream, but I didn't reply to it because I was in the middle of talking to someone. I think that was, oh yeah, during my call with Megan Ribbons, you had made a comment about how if I was talking about selfishness, and you said sometimes when people say someone is being selfish, they just mean you're being inconsiderate. And yeah, I think that's right. Um, Actually, I'm not repeating the whole story that I was telling in the last call, but after the live stream, I think I was thinking about to the way I was telling that story, and I actually misremembered some of the details. So I don't know if the person in that story I was telling actually called me selfish. Um, Maybe not. But that was kind of the essential concept of the discussion I was having with this person. Um, but I don't know if either I or the person used that word. Might have used a different word like sacrifice. Like, isn't it right to make sacrifices sometimes? But anyways, I thought your comment sounded right to me. That yeah, sometimes when people say you're being selfish, they just mean you're being inconsiderate. So, and assuming that's um, it's bad to be inconsiderate, then I think you could say, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing that the person meant if they say you're being selfish and they mean it as a criticism. What they mean is you're being inconsiderate. That could be a valid thought. Um, all right. So there was another little minute or two riff just based on or triggered by Audrey's saying hello. Um, and you've kept me here for a couple more minutes. I was about to turn off my mic and camera, and then someone said hello. So if anyone else wants to say hello or make a comment, make a question, anything, I will stick around more. Or if Audrey wants to say anything else, feel free or call in. Um, or maybe I should give a new deadline. I wonder if Audrey piped up because I said I was about to turn off my mic and camera if no one said anything. So maybe if I give another deadline, I'll get some more interaction. I think we're at the highest level it's been so far. It's at 5 people watching. I guess one of those is me, so me and 4 other people, assuming YouTube's analytics are correct. So let me. Audrey says yes, haha. So I guess it's true that the reason she said something is so I didn't turn off my mic and camera. Well, I appreciate the engagement, Audrey. Um, that I appreciate that you want me to not turn off my mic and camera. Uh, you want me here. Um, Shows that you value the show. Oh, speaking of valuing the show, maybe you can show it with a like too. So people who are watching, I just gave the show a like. So if you want to help the show, that'll maybe also help people by helping it in the algorithm. If you tell YouTube that you like the stream, that might get some more people over here. Or you can also announce it. You can tweet about it and just tweet a link to the show. Um, I was wondering last time when people weren't there were people here last time, but they weren't engaging. And I thought, well, maybe they're just waiting for someone to call in. Um, I don't know if that's what people are doing now. Like if you're just hoping that someone calls in and you'd be interested to hear that, or you just like hearing me talk like this. Um, or maybe I wonder if you saw that my short segment on the Cory Booker video. I wonder what your reaction was to that, if you had any reactions. All right, we got another person saying hello in the chat. Jasper McMinnis, which is a new person. I don't think I've seen you here before. So welcome, Jasper. Nice to meet a new person. This is reminding me of scrolling on TikTok sometimes. I don't know if you all use TikTok, but I use that app sometimes. And in my TikTok feed, there are um, live streams sometimes. And when you join or when you scroll through or when your feed presents you with a live streamed with a live stream on TikTok and you tap the screen, then um, it tells you that, or it tells the creator who's running the TikTok that so and so has joined. So it'll say like Dan Norton has joined if I press the screen during one of the live streams, and then sometimes the creator will reply to that and say, hello, Dan. So it's a little different than YouTube. So I have no way to know who's watching me unless someone says something in the chat. So it just tells me the number of people, but it doesn't show names. And so the only way to know who it actually is, well, not that I necessarily know who it is from a screen name, because you can have some kind of random screen name. Not everyone uses their actual name, but I only know who it is either by their screen name or their actual name if they type something in chat. So right now I see just two people, their names. Here's another comment from Audrey. Can you talk about Leonard Peikoff's solution to the problem of induction? Wow. Okay. That's a big topic. I can talk about it at least for a little bit. Um, so let's see. What should I say about that? Well, first of all, um, what is the problem of induction? Maybe I'll briefly address that for anyone who's not familiar. So, how do you justify generalizations? Maybe you could, or can you justify generalizations? Like all men are mortal. That would be a generalization. You've seen a bunch of individual men die or human beings die, right? You know that Aristotle died and um, Ayn Rand died and Stalin died and your great 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 grandfather and grandmother, they died. You've seen all these particular people die, but I haven't died yet. You haven't died. How do we know just because these other people died that you were going to die or that everyone is going to eventually die? Is there really a justification for thinking that? If you want to generalize from these particular pieces of data to from, person X, person Y, person Z died to all people will die, um, that requires some kind of that's why did my screen just change? Did I hold on a second. I'm being distracted by something. The video of Cory Booker just popped back up on my screen, and I don't know why it did that. But I don't think it did that for you. Um, okay, I must have just like moused over the wrong tab or something. Okay, sorry about that. Um, and there's all kinds of other generalizations. Um, what would be one? Like Newton's laws are generalizations. Um, if for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Um, so if some, a ball hits one billiard ball hits another billiard ball with a certain amount of force in one direction, there's an equal and force exerted in the opposite direction, and maybe you can measure that in some way. And but you Newton puts this forward as a universal law. So it's not just in this particular case when one ball hit the other, uh, there was equal and opposite forces. But he's saying throughout the entire universe, whenever a force is exerted in one direction, there's an equal and opposite force in the other direction. Um, how do you know that just because it happened in these particular cases, it happens in every case? So that gives you a little flavor of what the problem of induction is. And this is a issue that's been wrestled with for centuries, going back to Hume at least, who was writing in the 18th century, so over 200 years ago. And he's very famous for saying that there really is no solution. Um, it's just by habit or custom we think we're we're led to think that there's um, like just because every time I let go of a ball, it falls down. Um, Maybe next time when I let go, it could go up or go sideways, or it could turn into a balloon or a snake, right? Um, all kinds of crazy things might happen. And there's really no rational justification for thinking they won't happen. It's just out of habit. We're used to thinking that when you let go of a ball, it goes down because we're just in the habit of observing that. We think we're justified, but we're really not. So various philosophers have tried to solve this problem and say, yeah, actually, it is justified to make generalizations. Every time you let go of the ball, it will go down. But I guess part of the solution is to recognize that these are contextual things. Like if you let go of the ball on the moon, it'll still go down, but not as fast because the force of gravity is less. If you're in the middle of outer space and you let go of the ball, then it won't go in any discernible direction, right? If there's no, it's unclear. There's no like massive center of gravity nearby to pull it in any direction, at least not as much as like the nearest where the largest source of gravity is might just be so far away that you can't tell that it's moving at all if you let go of it. It might just stay in your hand if you release pressure on it. So, but if you specify the context and you say, well, if you're on the earth and then you let go of a ball, then it will go down. So, um, now, is that absolutely true? What if a gust of wind comes by that's really strong, like a hurricane force wind, and it blows the ball sideways or in some other direction other than down? So, do we have to add another qualifier and say, well, if you're on Earth and there's no strong wind blowing in some other direction, then it will go down. That's absolutely true. I'm sure you could come up with other qualifiers you might have to make, endless qualifiers if you want to. But this is all a preamble. This is just to set up the issue. What is Leonard Peikoff's solution to the problem of induction? Can I even tell you the solution? I'm sorry if I'm going to disappoint you by going through all that and then saying I don't even know what his solution is. Um, what I can't say is it's not fresh in my mind because it's been years since I read his book. So I remember he discussed it in The Art of Thinking some. That's the lecture course he gave back in the early 90s. And then, but I guess most people know it from his, and he's discussed it in other places, I think, like probably in his history of philosophy course. When he got to the section on Hume, he might, I think he says some things about it, maybe in the Q&A session after that lecture. But more recently, he's he's discussed the issue and proposed a solution in his lecture course, Induction in Physics and Philosophy, which I think was originally given in somewhere around 2004 uh, at an objectivist conference. And I guess it was refined. Uh, I think it was 2003 actually. No, no, no. It was I think 2002 is when he originally gave his course Induction in Physics and Philosophy, and then he refined it a bit the next year because I was at the lecture course. I'm remembering now where I was. So it was a series of 5 lectures, I think, in 2002, and then he revised the first lecture and split it into 2 lectures. So the next year, 2003, what originally was lecture one, I think, became the new lectures one and two. So now there was 6 lectures total. And then when the course was finally published, I guess on the Ayn Rand Institute eStore website, it was I guess the course that was sold was the the version with 6 lectures in it. So the original first lecture was replaced by the 2 lectures she gave in 2003. And then a few years later, his theory was turned into a book, or at least part of a book, by David Harriman. So David Harriman was a physicist, or at least a teacher of physics, and he taught Leonard Peikoff. I think he gave him private lessons in the history of physics, and that helped Leonard Peikoff get the data which he needed to formulate his theory of induction. So David Harriman gave this. He wrote a book called The Logical Leap, which came out I think in 2010. So several years after Leonard Peikoff gave his courses, and Peikoff wrote a foreword or an introduction to that book. And the first chapter or 2 chapters, I don't remember exactly, contain the theory or the Leonard Peikoff solution to the problem of induction. And then the later chapters of the book, I guess, give examples of how the theory applies, flesh it out more. But the essence of the theory is in the first chapter or 2. So if you want to find out what his theory is, that's maybe the best place to look because that's the latest version of it. And now, before I go into, hold on, I'm being distracted. I see a spider in the corner of this room that I'm in, and I need to crush it. I also need to plug in my laptop because I don't have it plugged in and it's running low on battery. So I'm going to turn off my camera for a minute while I deal with the spider and get my power cord. And after that, hopefully I will remember some more about the problem of induction to say here. But hold on just a minute or two. If Okay, I am back. I killed the spider and I plugged in my laptop. All right, sorry for that interruption. So back to Leonard Peikoff's solution to the problem of induction. Okay, so one thing I remember, not from his lecture course, but from his I think it was from his Art of Thinking course, um, where he said some things about the problem of induction. Oh, I see some more comments came in from Audrey. Um, I have that induction in physics and philosophy lecture course in my ARUQ. Yeah, it's free online now, I think, which is great. Used to be behind a paywall. She says she also has The Logical Leap on my bookshelf. Haven't read it yet. I've also heard many factual criticisms in the book. Wasn't Harriman excommunicated from ARI? Um, okay, so I guess you haven't read it yet. Okay. Um, so that's really, I wonder if I should, maybe I'll say some things about it that aren't in the book. Well, that's what I was just about to say, because what I was just about to say was what I remember him talking about in his course, The Art of Thinking, which I think was 1992, which is long before his book. So it's not going to spoil anything. Um, you've heard there are many factual criticisms in the book. I think you mean of the book. Um, I've heard about some of that. I haven't followed it too closely, but yeah, some people have made criticisms of the book. Um, I am not really one who's in a position to judge them, but yeah, there's some of that. Um, there's debate over also the importance of the criticisms. Like you might think there's some minor factual mistakes or not. Maybe they're significant. I don't know, but yeah, there's debate about those issues. Wasn't Harriman excommunicated from ARI, you ask? Well, you put excommunicated in quotes. I don't know that there was any there's been any like official break. If there was, maybe it was like behind the scenes and not announced. I'm not aware of like ARI ever announcing any kind of official break. I think there might have just been kind of a silent parting of the ways and they just stopped dealing with each other at a certain point. Um, that's my recollection. Yes, because I don't remember hearing any statement on it. I think this was back around 2014, um, 14 or 15. Okay, and then Audrey says she's got to go for her 2 p.m. meeting. Okay, she wrote that at 1:59. I guess she didn't have to go far for her meeting. Maybe it's just a Zoom meeting. Um, okay, well, I guess she can listen to this later. So what I remember from the Art of Thinking course is he was saying to induce, you have to find the essence of something as opposed to the superficial characteristics of it. Like for instance, I think he was talking about the example of swans. Like, are all swans white? Um, uh, now, color is a relatively superficial characteristic of something, or at least of uh, animals. Like you see color vary on many animals, right? There's different colored cats. different colored dogs. People have different colors of skin, different hair colors, different eye colors. So there's a lot of evidence that the color of something can vary. Um, it's kind of a surface level trait. It doesn't have a lot of, like, there's not much significance to the fact that a cat is orange or black or white, right? Maybe if it lives like in the snow or something, then being white would help it survive and it would be relevant there. Um, like a polar bear. Um, but if we're just talking about like a house cat or people living in modern society, it's not, their color isn't really like camouflage. Um, but regardless of like what you might say is the evolutionary purpose of something's color, there's many examples of the color of something being different within a species. So if you see that all swans are white, like you don't see the variation in the color of the swans, all the ones you've seen are white. Well, um, is that justification for generalizing and saying all swans are whites? Well, I think Leonard Picot's point was no, because color is a relatively superficial thing. So maybe there's another part of the world where swans are black, and I think they actually are black in Australia. At least that's what I've heard, or some other part of the world. Um, and maybe it's just that there was continental drift or something, and that's why all the ones you see on certain continents are one color, and all the ones you see on another continent, like Australia, maybe, are another color. Um, but because color it doesn't really get to the essence of something, it's not really obvious that the color of something like a swan is gonna make much difference to its ability to survive. Like you might think, well, are all polar bears white? Well, I guess there's a stronger case for that, um, since that's part of how they survive. I guess they blend into the snow easier, so they can sneak up on predators more easily. And there's not, if there were a black polar bear, then it's going to have a harder time um, as a predator. So I think there's a better reason to think all polar bears are white than there is for thinking all swans are white. Because what difference does it make whether a swan is white or black? If it does make a difference, I'm not sure what that difference is. I haven't really thought about that, but it seems like color is more relevant to some species than other species. And it's not clear to me, it's not obvious that the color of a swan really matters. So there's reason to think that it's a more superficial, um, irrelevant sort of characteristic in a swan. So maybe it's just some accident like continental drift, which is the reason that all the swans we see in North America are white, and the ones you see in, say, Australia are black. Um, so if you're attuned to the essence of something, like the most important characteristic of it, which is not going to be its color, at least in the case of swans, then you're you're in a position to know whether you can make a generalization or not. Now there could be there's probably more that goes into it than that, but that just gives you a flavor at least of one of the types of considerations that go into solving this problem of induction. So a good solution would not be like since all the instances of a certain type you've seen up to now have a certain trait, therefore all the ones you'll ever see in the future anywhere will also have that trait. It depends on what the nature of that trait is. If it's something superficial like color and a swan, then there's not good justification. If it's something that's more essential to the species, like color in the case of a polar bear, then there's at least better justification. Maybe it's still not like guaranteed that every polar bear is going to be white, but there's at least a better chance of it since you know that color is something essential or at least important to how that animal survives. Now, I don't know that this point is unique to Leonard Peikoff. I wouldn't say this is um, maybe other people have made this sort of point, but he's the one who I heard first make this. Um, but there's much more that goes into solving the problem of induction than pointing out that it's important to identify the essential traits of something um, and base your generalizations on those essential traits rather than on non-essential traits. There's much more that goes into it than that, but off the top of my head, I don't know that I could tell you more about Leonard Peikoff's particular solution to the problem of induction. Um, Maybe if I thought about it more, reviewed my notes, I could tell you more, but it's been a while. So I think I should probably leave it there. Okay. Uh, so I see some people have popped out, um, and there's no new chats to engage with. Let me check Facebook, see if that person I sent a direct message to replied. No, it doesn't look like it. Okay, so I think I will now do the deadline thing again. I will wait another minute or two. I'll say till 2:15 and see if anyone else wants to engage. Otherwise, I'm going to turn my camera and mic back off. And maybe I'll do some other things like continue my reading about Henry the First, King of England. There was um, there was also a Henry the First in France within about a century, I think. I've got this huge timeline. Oh yeah, so Henry the First of England he became king in 1100. Henry the First of France looks like he became king in 1031. But I'm reading about Henry the First of England. I already read about Henry the First of France long ago. Okay, so I'll give you let's see another yeah, I'll give you another minute or two until 2:17 Pacific. If I don't see any new engagements either in the chat or someone wants to come on Zoom by 2:17, I'm going to turn off my mic and camera. Not going to end the stream. I'll still be here, but I'll just turn off my mic and camera, and I'll check back every few minutes and see if there's anyone else who engages in the chat or on Zoom. See 3 people here right now. Anyone want to say hello? Actually, how do I want to pop out this chat window? Maybe I need to unpin this message so I can see the menu of options. No, that's not. Okay, I pinned the link again to the Zoom call. All right, it's 2:17. I don't see any new engagement in the chat or anyone who wants to call in on Zoom. So I'm going to turn off my mic and camera, and I'll check back in a few minutes to see if there's any engagement. Not going to end the stream, just going to turn off the mic and camera for a bit. All right, I see somebody typed in chat. How can I debate you? Carlos Biendia. So all you need to do is click that link that I pinned in the chat. That will take you to Zoom. I don't even know if you need Zoom. I don't think you need Zoom to use Zoom. It might just open a web browser, like on the Zoom website that you can click through. Um, but I don't think you need to download the app. Just click that link. Oh, okay. Now I see you've entered the waiting room. So just a moment. Admit Javier. Okay. It's a different name. In the chat, it was Carlos Biendia. But if this is the same person, I
Oh,
guess there's a. Oh, hi. I heard
hi.
something.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, that's cool.
S- So, you're the Carlos who typed in the chat, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's me.
Okay. Yeah, you show up on
That's me.
Zoom as Javier.
Yeah, that's my name. Carlos is my handle.
Okay. Just a second. I want to see. Okay. I was just trying to figure out something in Zoom, but I think I figured it out. Okay. So, I'm glad you joined the call. You asked if you could debate. So, what are you interested in debating?
Well, I identify as um a classical libertarian. Um and I get okay, I guess my main like headline would be um how could you justify uh maximum freedom for people if you don't have state involvement in their lives, vis-a-vis housing, healthcare, as two basic sort of aspects of life that I think are best facilitated via social means. I'm trying to be as general as possible because I don't think it's not a particular policy that it is that I'm like asking to debate you on. It's more like the general principle, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, sure. We can talk about that. Just before we get into it, I'm curious to know a little bit about you. Just like you said, you're a classical liberal, but also
No,
just like,
classical libertarian.
oh, sorry, classical, yeah, classical libertarian. I'm curious how you came across my channel or when you came across my channel.
You a few years ago called into the Majority Report and you said the name of your YouTube channel. And so ever since then I followed it. So whenever you post a video, you pop up on my feed, and I've never had the opportunity to catch you live as I have now. So I'm like, this is like I'm like this is huge. It's like being a celebrity for me.
Oh, um, cool. Well, that's very interesting. Yeah, a lot of people have seen me on the Majority Report. Um, I guess that's my most viewed video is the ones I've been on Sam Cedar's channel. Um, well, I'm glad you found me and pleased to chat. Okay, so classical libertarian, and you were asking like how can there be
Okay, basically, more succinctly, how how could you justify a libertarian society in how could you justify maybe this is more for me, but like how could you justify a classical libertarian society, one that doesn't have state slash social involvement in healthcare and housing? I
okay,
guess for you the question would be more like, okay, how could you maximize the personal freedom of an individual without justifying state involvement in housing and healthcare?
Okay, first I just want to distance myself from the term libertarian. A lot of people call me that, but libertarians, at least many of them, are anarchists. They oppose the state or governments entirely. They're anti-state, and I'm not anti-state. I think or anti-government. I think there should be a state and there should be a government, but it should be limited in its role much more than it is today in the
Would you say
US. Like,
housing and healthcare is a role that it should be involved in?
no, no,
To what
that's
extent?
one.
To what extent? Like absolutely, minimally, or because I imagine you would say, as someone that believes in a state and you're not an anarchist, you believe that there's a role for a military, right?
Yes,
Okay, why?
because that pertains to what I think is the only thing government should be involved with, which is force. So, on my view, which I get from Ayn Rand, the only proper role of the government is to protect individuals from physical force. So, there are basically three functions, three proper functions of a government on Ayn Rand's view. One is the military. Um, that protects us from force or from coercion by foreign nations. So, like, if Russia wanted to invade, the U.S. military would protect us from Russian aggression.
Right.
So we need a military to protect us from foreign threats. Domestically, there should be a police force. So that's another function of government, protecting us from domestic criminals. So we don't have robbers and rapists and murderers going around society and coercing people in various ways. And then the third proper function of government is a court system to peacefully settle disputes so that if two individuals or groups of individuals have a dispute, they don't have to try to solve it by resorting to force. So if you have a dispute like about property with your neighbor, right, where exactly
Mm,
does your land end and his land begins? You could fight it out, right? You could have like a duel or a gunfight,
yeah.
but oh, it's better to resolve that peacefully through the courts, and that's why we have the courts, so people don't
Okay.
have to just take the law into their own hands and be vigilantes. But go ahead.
So I guess before we continue, so I just functionally speaking, I feel like your philosophy or ideology is functionally the same as libertarianism or a strain of it, which is why I call you that. So how would you prefer to be referred to as an objectivist?
Yeah, that would be a better term.
Okay, cool. I'll call you
Now,
that from
there
now
are
on
some
then.
libertarians who might share my view of government, but there are many who don't, who are anarchists, anti-state, and I want to distinguish myself from those.
Okay, but there are libertarians that aren't anarchists. So, like, as a classical
Yeah, I
libertarian
think so.
myself,
I don't know if there's like what's the proper way to settle the exact definition of like what exactly is a libertarian. I don't know that there is a
I mean,
official
for
coherent
me, for
definition of it.
me that, and I guess that's one reason why I don't. I would sort of agree with you why you're not really libertarian is because I describe myself as a classical libertarian in the sense of I believe that sort of personal liberty should be maximized as much as possible. And going back to my original question is that's why I feel like there should be involvement of the state in housing and in healthcare. Because like you said, the three basic things that a state should concern itself of the military, uh, police, and what was the last thing you said? Oh, a judiciary, right?
Yeah.
Those are sort of like administrative functions, right? So with the judiciary, it's sort of in each of those cases, it's a monopoly of force, right? And states are the expression of violence. Essentially, every state function is an expression of violence. Borders are violent. Every state is a violent creation that only exists because it either is or has been a historical expression of force to delineate itself from its neighbors. Like that's how all nation states have come about. What I don't get is why you then arbitrarily cut that philosophical line off at the military police and things, because I guess that's the difference between you and me. I believe in the maximization of personal liberty. So I feel like at the very least, housing and healthcare should be like taken care of, because you can't thrive as an individual if you're having to engage, or you can't thrive as an individual if you aren't healthy, and you can't thrive as an individual if you aren't if you are busy with making sure that you're not dying out in the streets. Do you know what I mean?
So we have to be clear on what is meant by liberty or freedom. Or were you saying you can't thrive? Is that the word you used as an individual?
Yeah, you can't thrive as an individual if you're having to care about your basic needs, right? I mean,
Okay.
there's a reason why humans invented cities, because it's a more logical and efficient way to distribute resources, security, and all of that.
You
And
said there's a reason why people invented what?
cities,
Oh, cities. Okay. So we have to be clear on what is meant by liberty or freedom. So if you talk about being maximally free or having maximal liberty, well, what exactly does that mean? I think there is there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding around that concept. So if we don't, if we're not on the same page about what that term means, then that's going to have all kinds of implications as to what is the most free or the society with the most liberty look like. That's going to depend tremendously on what is meant by freedom
yeah. I
or
mean,
liberty.
for me, freedom is that you're free from want, you're free from fear, you're free from having to engage in um, practices that take up the majority of your time and labor just for survival, rather than engaging in things that are going to make you thrive, going to make your community thrive, going to make the people around you thrive. Um, Essentially, I'm not, and yeah, that's why I call myself a classical libertarian, because I believe that um, that's sort of the ultimate, not just social but human and individualistic pursuit, is to be able to thrive and create conditions in the society for such thriving to happen.
Okay, so I have some thoughts on what you just said. One is, I think we need to be um, wary of defining things in a circular way. So if you say, what does freedom mean? It means free from, or so, and then fill in the blank. So we don't want to use the term free in the definition of what it means to be free. That would be circular. Or we're not,
Okay,
we have
so
to put the term freedom in other terms. That's
all right,
one thing.
so freedom is the ability to act your will without unnecessary constraints around you that otherwise might limit you from enacting your will.
I'm just writing this down so I don't forget. It's the ability to act on your will without unnecessary constraints.
Yeah.
Some,
So it's sort of like the difference between so some people might perceive freedom as the ability to leave a cage. My perception of freedom is the removal of the cage.
okay. Uh,
Does that make sense?
I don't know. Right now, I'm sort of in the information gathering stage. I'm just trying to understand your view, and then once I have a better grasp of that, then I can comment on it, evaluate it. Um,
I guess some people might call it positive freedom, whereas others might believe in freedom as like negative freedom. So like freedom to do things, freedom to be able to do things versus freedom from things.
okay. Yeah, that's a distinction that I do sometimes hear, positive versus negative freedom or liberty. Um, I'm not sure that's the best way to carve up the territory, um, but maybe we can try to sort that out in the course of
Okay.
this discussion. So I guess I hold what's often called, leave aside whether it's a good term for it, negative liberty. So it's the absence of coercion. Now that's another term which needs to be defined because I think it's used in different ways. So what exactly is coercion? So I define freedom in terms of coercion when I say freedom is the absence of coercion. So then that raises the question, well, what is coercion? And
Would you call going to work in order to afford rent a form of coercion?
no.
Why?
Okay, so this now we go down this road of what exactly is coercion. I think coercion is physical force for one thing, and it's
Does it? But no, but does it? It doesn't have to be physical though, because like, for example, you could, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, all states are, and I thought we agreed on this, sort of all states are sort of expressions of violence, right? But that violence isn't continual. That is established maybe one time, but the violence continues in sort of the threat of it from, an institution, whether that be a state-run institution or a private institution.
all
You're still
states
you
are
can you can still be you can still be coerced by a non-physical means, no?
I don't think so. I think of coercion as a physical thing.
I
Uh,
mean,
so
at
like
least
if
at least legally speaking, coercion legally or at least as I'm aware of, coercion refers to both physical and non-physical sort of means. Like when you coerce someone, you're not necessarily. It's kind of like a threat, isn't it? It's a gangster's threat. As it would be a shame if something happened. It would be a shame if I was homeless because I couldn't pay my rent because I didn't go to work.
okay, well, I do include threats, like physical threats, under coercion. So I guess to spell it out a
So
bit
if
more, uh, I think of coercion as physical force or the threat of physical force. Now, I don't know exactly how it should be parsed. Like, should I, instead of saying or, like they're mutually exclusive, maybe I should say physical force, including the threat of physical force. But in any case, I do
but
include
what if the threat was
physical
systemic?
threats. What if the threat is systemic?
Yeah.
Um, I think that might get into very woozy kind of territory, very subjective territory, and it's not clear how you define. I think that's actually a danger of uh, concepts of coercion that don't define it in terms of physical force. It becomes very subjective and arbitrary, and
Yeah, but then
that's
yeah,
not
but
good.
then but your I feel like your description of what coercion is itself very arbitrary because like would you say that would you say that there are certain systems, social systems that reproduce in society that don't produce negative outcomes for certain people in society?
Are there systems in society that don't produce negative outcomes?
So for example, what I mean is there are pressures, social pressures that coerce people to act in certain ways, right?
Well, you just use the
And
term
you,
coercion, and I wouldn't consider it coercion. I mean, that's the point of discussion. Like, what exactly is
okay,
coercion? And if it's just social, well, no, I wouldn't say there's such a thing unless that includes some kind of physical component. Like if they're peer pressure, for example, a lot of people are saying
okay,
take
okay. So okay,
drugs,
so
drink the
so so so
alcohol.
so
I wouldn't
pollution.
consider that to
Would
be
you would
coercion.
would you consider pollution to be a form of coercion?
It depends. I think that one's a little tricky. Um, but I think it's better to start with examples that are much more straightforward and not tricky cases, like I think pollution is. And this is a reason I often like to discuss desert island cases where there's not like a society. It's just two people on a desert island
Yeah.
alone. And talk about first get clear on what is coercion in that case, and if we can agree on that, then maybe go to more complicated cases like a larger society and things like pollution. But
Okay,
just to
so
get the
let's
basic
say
concepts,
so we're on an island, right? And um I'm really good at like I've got food. I've got resources. I've got a little hut. I've got fish on my side, and you have nothing. And I say to you, um, I'll give you, I'll give you a place to sleep if you catch fish for me. Are you being coerced in that situation?
doesn't sound like it. You just made me an offer, and I can choose to accept that, or I can try to survive on my own, catch my own fish, make my own hut to sleep in.
Okay, but okay, okay, let's say that you're let, all right, I'll go back to the example that I remember from your thing. So you're hanging off a cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're hanging off a cliff, and I offer to save your life in exchange for you in exchange for your eternal indefinite life service to me. Are you being coerced in that situation?
So I'm on a hanging off. So the example for this was from for anyone who doesn't know, my third call to the majority report with Sam Seder. Sam gave this example of I go hike. He and I go hiking, and
Yeah.
I slip off the edge of a cliff, and I'm hanging on. And he says, "Give me your hand. I'll help you up. But before you do that, do you have any money on you?" And he says, um, giving him my money, like I guess I'll have to use one hand and reach in my pocket and pull out any money I have and give it to him. Giving him my money is a condition of getting his help. And then he asked me, "Is that coercion?" And I said, "No, it's not coercion. It's corrupt, but not
But okay,
coercion."
okay, but why is it not coercion? Because you're literally going to die. You're literally going to die. Like you're for you, it's physical harm, right? You're going to be physically harmed
Yeah, but
if
he's not the one who's harming me. It's my fall to the cliff. He didn't put me in that position. If he pushed me off the
oh
cliff, if he pushed me into that position, then then he would have coerced me. But I just
okay. I guess okay,
accidentally.
I guess this is where my biggest problem with your ideology comes from, because I just find it insane that you would consider someone with the positive ability to save your life and actively goes out of their way to make sure they don't do it is not a form of coercion to get something out of you. But you make the distinction of like if he pushes you, then that's bad. I mean, functionally, from your perspective, it doesn't really matter whether it's corrupt or whether it's coerced. Can there not be corrupt coercion? Can is I mean, you're calling it like I think in the video the producer said, what's his name? Matt said that,
Matt.
yeah, he says that conversations with objectivists and Ayn Rand fans, it all just comes down to semantics. And yeah, basically, a lot of our conversation has just been about like definitions of things. What do you define things? It isn't actually based in like the real material world because it is an interesting conversation to know what would you define it as if someone like it's kind of like a different version of the trolley bus um sort of paradox or debate or question. But I just find it insane that in a situation where value is being extracted out of you at the cost of your life, you don't see that as coercion. But you do see it as corrupt, though. I'm so. Are you of the opinion that all that sort of that landlordism is a corrupt practice?
No, it depends on the way the landlord operates. I said it was exploitation in the video, but not coercion. I think,
Corrupt exploitation.
uh, yeah, I think both the terms corrupt and exploitation would apply to what Sam was doing when he makes me this offer, but I wouldn't call it coercion.
Would you
And
would you
I just want to say that I do think it's important to be clear on definitions. I think Matt Leck was the producer's name. I think he might have used the term pedantic, um, but uh, in any case, I do think having clear definitions on key concepts is very important. Otherwise, you're just talking past each other. If people have different definitions of a term, then you're not really going to be able to resolve any disagreements. It's not the only thing that
yeah,
matters, but it's certainly one thing that matters, having clear
yeah, that's fair,
definitions.
but I yeah, that's fair, but I guess the issue is then sort of, do you not feel that um okay, let me reset the conversation because I want to have an interesting conversation with you. All right, so you're like pro-capitalist with a capital C, right?
Well, I don't know what the capital is doing. That's another term, capitalism. What exactly does that mean? I mean, a lot of people say today the US is the capitalist system. I would say no, it's far from a capitalist system.
What would you call
So,
the US then?
mixed economy. It's a
Okay.
mixture of freedom and controls, but we have tons of government intervention, like Social Security, Medicare. People are forced, they're coerced, going back to
Yeah.
those terms, to pay for other people's retirement or health care or public
Are people
education.
are people being coerced to pay for the military?
Yeah,
But the
yeah, because
military is a good thing.
it's funded by taxes. It shouldn't be. People should be able to fund the military by voluntary means,
That's ridiculous.
exclusively.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
All
That's
right.
not.
Well, we disagree. So there's a lot
But
of
okay,
things
but
that
okay. So then, but so okay. So why is it a good thing, or why is it an acceptable thing for people to be coerced to be able to have to pay for a military, a police force, and a
no,
judicial
I didn't
system?
say it was acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable. I think it's bad that people are coerced to pay for the military. It should be funded by voluntary means,
But
which
you
is
said
the
the military is
opposite of
something that the state. You said the military is like the bare basics of what a state should be doing.
that's a proper function of the government, but it's a separate question as to how that function should be funded. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is
Oh,
it should be funded by voluntary means, not by coercion.
do you think a military can work based off of voluntary means?
I think it can. Yeah, I have a
Have
video
you got an
on
example of that?
I have a video called "How to Fund the Government Without Taxes." I think that's the title. And I talk about this particular issue. So, but I can say here a little bit on it. So, for one thing, um, well, actually, maybe I'll start with an example. Like George
Wait, hold
Washington's
on, hold on.
army.
I don't want to get too in the weeds. I don't want to get too in the weeds. I don't want to get too into it. So you consider America to be a mixed economy, right?
Yes,
So, but
meaning
technically
there's
speaking,
there's some element of freedom, but there's also a lot of coercion.
okay. So maybe let's not talk about in absolute terms. Let's talk about in relative terms. Relatively speaking, would you say that America has a capitalist economy?
Relatively, is it capitalist? I mean,
So
I would say
as in every country has a mixed economy by definition. So I don't really feel like that's a very helpful answer. But if you were to stack every economy in the world, from least capitalist like Nepal to most capitalist like, well, whatever you think it is, how where would America be on that scale?
I would do it in terms of freedom, like which I get. Maybe
But
that's
that's
a
but that but that's not a very but that's not a ironically that's a very subjective metric. That's why I say
well,
relative
I don't
because
think it is, but I don't think it is subjective. But that goes back to our debate from before, like what exactly is freedom, what exactly is coercion. But I
so
would
you think
say
which economy is least coercive then in your opinion?
I don't know which is the least coercive. I think the U.S. is probably in the top area, but how many countries are there? Like 190 or something like that. I would
Okay.
guess
Would
U.S.
you
is
call
somewhere
China?
like in the top 20.
I just okay. Would you call the economy of Vietnam capitalist or communist or how or what? Because that's the thing. Like every country is has some state intervention of some sort.
Yes.
So
Yeah, and there's no purely free country, and there's also no purely coerced country. I mean, they all have some elements, no matter how small, of both freedom and coercion. But
but
I
what
think
do
it's
you
still helpful to
what do
have
you
these ideas of what it would be and then you use those ideals like as measuring sticks for how mixed something is.
yeah.
So
But I
like,
think but so do you so for because I guess what I'm trying to get at is like I'm looking at the economies of America and let's say of China, and I'm trying to sort of draw out distinctions between the two of what you think. But if you think that America isn't a capitalist economy in sort of the greatest general sense of the term, then it's difficult for me to ask you that question because then I don't. You're just going to say that it's the same as China, but I don't think that they are.
it's not the same as China. There's a different degree of mixture. Like I think America is significantly more free than China, but they both have elements of freedom and elements of coercion. Just
Um,
like it's like a just to take an analogy from like water. You can have pure water, which is just pure H2O, and then you can have water with that's mixed
that's not
in with
true, by the
some
way.
chemicals. Um,
That's
you've
no,
got
but
purified water, you got water
that's
with
actually a really good.
minerals.
That's actually a really good example because let's say let's say for you, your ideal economy would be like distilled water. There's absolutely no state intervention whatsoever. It's just pure distilled water, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's no coercion if that means the initiation of force. There's only
Whereas whereas my
retaliatory
opinion,
force.
whereas my opinion is that like I feel like yeah, water is good. Some of my communist friends might argue that it needs a lot more, fluoridization than I do. I just maybe think take it out the mountain. It's natural, but it has the minerals you need. It has a bit of impurities that you need because distilled water, if you were to drink that, it would literally kill you. Like it chemically is too pure for the human body to consume. I think that's kind of a really good example that you've provided there as to like why I feel like maybe your philosophical model is a little bit not rooted in reality.
Well, it's a separate question as to whether the impurities in a given system are good or bad. So maybe in the case of water, it's good to have some impurities. Maybe it's good to have some minerals, for instance. But in a political system, I don't think it's good to have any initiation of force. So just because it's good in the case of water doesn't mean it's good in the case of political systems that you have impurities.
So when you
I mean,
say
if you're going
when
to argue for that, that requires more argumentation. It's not a given that just because it's true in the water case that it's going to be true in the. I mean, you might argue for that, but that's going to take an argument.
yeah, yeah, of course. I was just using that. I was just using it as an example because I just feel like if you look at China, they literally have the best electric cars in the world. They have the best phones in the world. They are at, they have the best batteries in the world, the best solar power in the world, the best trains in the world, the best manufacturing base in the world, the most modern manufacturing base in the world, and sort of all these things. And I just would like to know what you think America could do to quickly eclipse China technologically and economically, which I feel like I feel like America, on paper is sort of more dominant economically than China, but I feel like with China, its economic dominance is actually more based on the real economy and in sort of like material assets and capabilities, whereas America's sort of economic dominance is based more off of part speculation and also part projection of its own power.
There's more that goes into evaluating a country as good than just economics, for one thing. Now, I don't know. I'm not very up on the details on like what is China the leader in. You listed a bunch of things where you said it's either the leader or at least ahead of America in certain respects. Um, so for one thing, I don't think the purpose of the U.S. or any government should be to be the leader in a certain area of the economy. I think the proper purpose of a government is to protect people from force. Now, I think that's going to correlate to a significant extent with progress and being um, leaders in certain fields. Like, I think you're going to progress more if you have a freer um, society where freedom is understood as the absence of coercion or the absence of the initiation of force. But that's not the immediate purpose that a government should have, that it should be aiming at. It's not to have more GDP than some other country, for instance. It's to protect people's rights, which means, as I understand that, protecting them from force. And that's something that I think the US is significantly better than China at because in China, there's much less freedom from oppression. You could get in trouble if you, I don't think they have a freedom of press like exists in the America, in America, for instance, the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
You're you're under the thumb of the government more. You can't criticize them as much. Um,
Yeah, in America,
uh,
you definitely can't get arrested for criticizing the government or the governments of other countries.
yeah, at least right now. Hopefully that will stay the case. But I think
Oh,
there is,
I was being sarcastic because people have been sort of taken off the streets
oh yeah, oh, you're referring
for
to,
doing that.
yeah, I think our freedoms in America have been under threats and have been diminishing for in important ways, including under the Trump administration, and which is one of the reasons that
And
I think America is far from capitalist. We've lost a lot of freedom in this country compared to the way things used to be. I think the peak of freedom, at least economic freedom in this country, maybe was in the late 19th century, so the late 1800s. It was after that that huge social programs like the New Deal, FDR's, Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal was started when you had the beginning of Social Security. And in the 60s under Lyndon Johnson,
would
Medicare
you say
began
would you say American freedom peaked in 1861 or 1865?
after the slave period. That was the slavery was a huge contradiction to the idea of freedom that was at the core of this country's founding. So I think there was an inconsistency between slavery and the country's founding principles, and that inconsistency was eliminated by fighting the Civil War. And fortunately, the free side defeated the slave side. But that's why I said the late 19th century. At least one reason I said the late 19th century, after the period of slavery, was maybe the freest period in America's history, economically speaking. I think there are other respects in which today there's more freedom. Like for instance, something like gay rights, like you have the freedom to be married, uh, regardless of gender. Whereas, 100 years ago in the late 19th century, maybe you weren't. So there are some ways in which I think freedom has increased since the 19th century. But if we're just talking strictly economics, like property rights, do you have the right to control your own property? Um, in that
Yes,
sense,
that's
I
no,
think
that's
probably
yeah, 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 but
late
that's yeah,
19th
but that
century.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I guess but I guess yeah, what you're saying is true because when people lost the right to own other people as property, that was a massive loss of freedom.
No, losing the right to own other people is not a loss of freedom. In my on my view, you're not.
But
That's a violation of freedom.
it's a loss. It's a loss of economic freedom because you had a violent state power coming in, sort of coercing people to not um to not as make much money as they could.
To not coerce people, coercing people to not coerce people. It's
No, no,
retaliatory
no, 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 no,
force.
no. Because well, because back in those days, they weren't considered people, so it was fine. It was they were defined, like you said, definitions are very important. So they weren't defined as people; they were just property, like cattle. So in that sense, then yeah, I agree with you. It was the greatest peak of American freedom. Because after that, then you then have to give people certain like there was a redefinition of what a person was, of rights and stuff like that. And then yeah, the New Deal came and it supported people even more, so there was even less economic freedom.
Well, there are. So you're bringing up the issue of you're saying there's freedom to people lost freedom when slavery was taken away
Yeah,
as an option, um, and that's based on the idea of or based on a certain definition of person, like given the way person was defined, since they
yeah,
weren't
because
people
because
according
because
to
because
certain definitions, then taking away a slave would just be taking away someone's property, and that's a
yeah,
violation. Well, I
when
mean, that's not, we have to have the right definition of person. So on a correct definition of person, um, taking away a slave is not an infringement of property rights because there is no property right over another person. Um, if you have a incorrect definition of person, then yeah, it might have some implications, like you were saying. But let's assume a proper definition of a person where it doesn't matter what your skin color is.
oh, a man of any skin color.
Yeah, where skin color is irrelevant to whether someone is a person.
Okay, so then how come but then how do we deal with women then? Because they were still property. I mean, socially speaking, that's what a marriage is, isn't it?
Well,
Like
a
legally as
similar
well.
consideration will apply to women. Like a proper definition of person would include women as well. So
Okay,
let's go with that understanding of person, the proper
okay.
understanding.
And you think the New Deal was what do you think? What do you think of what's happening with Doge and Social Security right now? Do you think that the process by which they're doing it is bad, but the ultimate aim of sort of slowly getting rid of it is good?
Doge. Well, I do think the government should be cut. And I talked about this in one of my early live streams. I had a little section on Doge, and I think I included the word Doge in the title. So if anyone wants to look up what I said then, you can look for that. It's like the first or second live stream I did. But just to say a little on it now, I do think the government needs to be cut, but much more massively than is being done through Doge. According to what I've heard, they're just tinkering with these little things like that add up to a few billions or maybe tens of billions. But Social Security is like $1 trillion program, and like Medicaid and Medicare are hundreds of billions. That's really what's causing the financial problems in the US, and that's the thing that needs to be cut. But that's not on the table for cutting. I think Trump has said like he's not going to touch those programs. But I think you need to touch those programs to really
How is it?
solve the
Why
financial
do you need to cut them?
problems that the U.S.
What
is
problems is it
facing.
causing?
What?
What problems is it causing?
What problems is it causing? Well, there's I don't know how many trillions it is, but there's a huge debt that the U.S. has right now. So if you think having uh, trillions in debt and trillions in unfunded liabilities is a problem, then these are problems. Like Social Security, I think it's going to run out of funds in I don't remember exactly the year, but like within a decade, I think, unless changes are made. Like if you start taxing people more or increasing the retirement age, then there's just not going to be enough money there. It's going to run out.
So then
Um,
tax people more in it.
what?
Tax people more in it.
Earn it? This is
No, tax people. Tax like increase the band through which it gets paid.
increase the what?
Because as I understand it, if you earn any money earned over a certain amount of money doesn't get touched by social security.
There are yeah, there are limits to how much you can be taxed. I don't remember exactly what they are, but the point is the whole system is going to run out of money within a
You
decade
should you should
unless there
you
are
should you should
changes
call it
to.
you should call it to the majority report again about this issue.
Uh, I don't know if I'm going to call in the majority report anymore after my last call. I because in my seventh call, which was my last call, I was talking about Social Security and Ayn Rand's taking it. So Sam has said she's hypocritical
Yeah.
for taking it, which is a very common thing you hear, and I think that's a smear, and there's no basis for that view. She wasn't opposed to taking Social Security. She was opposed to having the system in the first place. But if you're forced to participate in the system, there's no problem with taking it. If you recognize that it's wrong to force people, that people shouldn't have to participate in such a system in the first place. It's like
I
I've
heard the
thought of
same thing
this
about some.
sometimes. Like if you're in the Soviet Union and the government has a monopoly on the food system, are you a hypocrite if you stand in their bread lines to try to get bread while thinking that the government shouldn't be running the food system in the Soviet Union?
Do you think people living in capitalist countries are hypocrites for criticizing capitalism?
Um, Hold on, I'll come back to that in a second, but um, I just want to go back to the majority port
Oh
comment I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
making for a second. Um, in in my last call, I told Sam that I thought he was smearing Ayn Rand's position, and at a certain point, I I asked him like, "Is that okay that you're smearing her?" And he said, at some point, he said something like, "Well, she deserves to be smeared more," and it's because of a comment like that that I'm not sure I want to go back on that show. Like, because smearing is like you're saying something false, maybe deliberately so. You're just lying about the person's position. But if he's okay with smearing Ayn Rand, if he's not going to have the honesty to present her position as it actually is, if he's going to like just be okay with smearing her, then I think he might be beyond the pale of someone who's worth talking to.
I think no.
So,
I think it's definitely. I
hold
think
on. I'll give you a second. Let me just finish my little rant here. So, if he thinks it's okay to smear Ayn Rand, maybe he doesn't, but he said something that at least kind of suggested that. Maybe I should pull up the clip at some point. But given that sort of attitude, that's why I'm not sure I want to talk to him anymore. I'm just not sure it's worth talking to someone like that.
I think
Um,
it's definitely worth so because if you hadn't, then I wouldn't have never have come across you, and I think it's worth putting your message out there. Like there's not many people that call in to debate him anymore. and you were like one of my favorite callers to talk with him, partly because it was entertaining seeing the conversation you two were having, and then also partly because you were like one of the few people that just didn't let him get to you other than the Iron Rand thing, which I think is beneath you. I feel like you should focus on the ideas. You shouldn't focus on the people. And I think it's worth maybe, um, you know, not humbling yourself, but maybe sort of put that aside for the greater message of communicating with a wider audience. And I feel like the majority report um, listeners would really appreciate the open exchange of ideas. Because it is legendary. You are legendary. You are legendary. You are a legendary caller to the show, and you are like an essential part of the law. And I feel like you should take your mantle back again as a key character.
Well, I mean, there it might. It probably would get me some more exposure, but in the long term, I'm not sure it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's appropriate to have certain limits on who you engage with. Um, so setting aside this particular case, like whether it's a good idea for me to talk more with Sam or not, I think um, it's appropriate to have limits. Like, should I talk to someone like Hitler? Should I talk to someone like Putin?
It sound like
Um,
Hitler.
what?
It sound like Hitler.
No, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is it's appropriate. I think it's appropriate to have some limits. So then there's a question of, okay, well, exactly where do you draw the line? Well, first of all, I mean, what do you think about that? Like, should you draw the line somewhere, like before Hitler, and not talk to someone like Hitler, or would you say no,
Depends
even
why it
someone like that?
it depends why you want to talk to them though. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with talking to an unsavory character if I was a journalist. If I was a comedian with a large platform that wasn't about, you know, doing any investigative stuff, yeah, then maybe not. But I wouldn't. It would be more of a the lines would the boundaries the lines would be dictated more by like the why rather than the who.
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe I would. I mean, this is something I don't think it's obvious what the answer is. So I can see how the context could make a difference. It could be like, let's say I'm caught in Hitler's Germany, Nazi Germany. Let's say I'm a Jew in Nazi Germany, living under Hitler.
Mm.
And if I speak out, maybe I have a chance to save myself from being killed in the Holocaust. And I have an opportunity to debate Hitler on a world stage. And if I debate Hitler, then maybe I can avoid being killed. And many of the people who I love being killed can be avoided if I debate Hitler. Yeah, I would debate him there. Um,
What
but
about
if
what about what about debating Hitler if you wanted to have an open exchange of ideas and expose his followers to your ideas, which is objectivism, which is, as I understand it, the pure pursuit of liberty from coercion, not being forced to do anything you don't want to do.
I think it depends on what my alternatives are. Like if I can get out I can give my opinion on
Okay, here are your
Hitler.
two choices. Your two choices are you're hanging off a cliff and Sam Cedar is offering to save your life in exchange for all the money in your pocket versus debating Hitler in the stadium in Berlin, surrounded by all of his followers, being filmed by Liechtenstein, right? Goebbels is ready to put this film in all the cinemas of Northern Europe, and it's Hitler versus Dan Norton, Nazism versus objectivism, the debate of the century. Which one would you choose?
I'm unclear on the setup. So one option is I can debate Hitler and get all this exposure for the debate, and the other option was Sam Cedar can.
You're hanging off a cliff in the middle of a storm. You're close to death, close to death. You're just about to die, and Sam Cedars offers to save your life in exchange for admitting, in exchange for all the money in your pocket. What experience would you like? Would you rather go through?
What experience would I rather go through?
Be saved by Sam Cedar for all the money in your back pocket, or debate Hitler?
I'm trying to process this. This is really strange. So let's say I've got $100 in my back pocket, and either I can have the experience of giving that $100 to Sam and then being saved, or I can have the experience of debating Hitler on an international scale. And I can't have both of these experiences. I can only have one,
You
and
can only have one. You can only have one.
I have to choose. So if I choose the debate option, debate Hitler, that means I don't have to go through this experience with Sam at all.
Yes. But your experience with Sam, no one has to know. It's just an intimate moment of life and death between you and him.
Okay. And if
Because
I,
there was a French philosopher that said that the closest to intimacy men ever get to is through violence. So would you rather go through a coercive, non-coercive, violent act with Sam, or an intellectual debating experience with Hitler in Madison Square Gardens?
well, the experience with Sam is non-coercive in my view. I know that he doesn't hold that view, or at least didn't during that call, and maybe you don't. But my view
If you
is that it's
if you were debating Hitler in the middle of Berlin, of the stadium, and you're surrounded by Nazis, would you feel coerced to agree with him?
coerced to agree. Um, Maybe. I mean, it depends like how we fill in the details. So are we, if we're assuming that, I don't know, are we assuming that I'm a Jew? Uh, are we assuming that after this debate, I
Let's say
can
let
be like thrown in a concentration camp?
Okay, let's say people have assumed you're Jewish, even though you're not.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then maybe I'll be killed after this debate happens, right? Because he wants to kill Jews. So since I guess since it seems like there's a good chance I would be killed by engaging in this debate, I would rather go through the experience with Sam because in that case, my life would be saved.
But you're not. But he's not. But no one's coercing you to say anything, though.
In the debate?
If yeah, if you are killed, you're not killed by anyone in particular. You're either killed by a bullet or by Zyklon gas. The same way that if the experience with Sam, it's not coercive because it's gravity that's killing you. It's not Sam holding on to you.
Well, if I'm killed in Nazi Germany after I have this debate, then I'm being coerced then when I'm
Okay.
killed. If someone, shoots me or throws me in a gas chamber.
I'm gonna have to go because my partner's just come. and I now have to
Okay.
make dinner. How often do you have these chats?
I have been doing them when I first started streaming them. I was doing like one every other day, like so multiple times a week. And I've still been doing multiple a week, just not as often. Like I was thinking maybe I would do one in the middle of the week, like today, Wednesday, and then maybe one on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. Um, but I don't really have a strict schedule, so. But right now, I think I'll probably do at least one this weekend. I don't know if I'll do one before then, but my plan now is to do another stream Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, I'll try and hit you up then. It's been actually very entertaining conversing with you, and I'm gonna think about more questions to ask you. As a classical libertarian, I wanna pick your brain on certain things. But yeah, I'll catch you
Okay.
later, bro. See
All
you
right.
later,
Thanks
man.
for coming
Good
on.
night.
I appreciate your call.
Bye bye.
Okay. Bye. All right. Well, there goes Javier, or to go by his name in the chat. He had a different name in the chat. Um, where was, oh, Carlos Biendia. Well, I'm glad we got someone to call in. It took a little while, but maybe putting out that deadline helped. I said I was going to end the stream by 3 Pacific unless someone engaged. And then I think it wasn't too long after that that someone engaged. And see, so we got some other participants. Jason Adams, Objectivists Matters, has come into the chat. Uh, Hi, Jason. Let's see what you got to say here. So you joined at 3:20, 15 minutes ago. Okay, so I guess that was partway into that call that I just had. And you say, in it, it's how Brits Australians talk. I'm not sure what that means. This guy, Javier, he sounded, I wonder if that's his actual name, Javier. Isn't that more of a Latin Hispanic name? But he sounded British, I think. So maybe Javier was just a screen name. Anyways, I'm not sure what you mean there. It's how Brits or Australians talk. What exactly is how they talk? You say the cap, raise the cap. I guess that's where you're talking about Social Security. Europe does not have a cap. Parts of Europe. Maybe you're in Europe. I'm not sure. Um, Caps on Social Security in Europe. Germany has a cap of 90,600 euros, or what West Germany does, and then East Germany has a cap of 89,400 euros, says Jason. And then he gives other figures for France, Spain, Italy, Poland. So I guess what you mean here is these are okay, so these different countries have different caps on Social Security. Like if you earn more than that, you're not taxed on it, or at least not Social Security taxed on it. I don't know if there's other taxes. Then Jason says someone has to interview Hitler. Really? I'm not sure about that. Can't he just be destroyed? Interview versus debate versus sharing the stage versus your show versus his show. Different contexts. Yeah, they're all different contexts, different ways to engage with someone. Like a friendly chat is different than debate or a hostile debate. Is he coming on my platform or am I going on his platform? These different things could be relevant depending on who it is. Um, and then Jason's last chat says we could watch clips and comments and not share the stage if it were Hitler. Yeah. So at a certain point, I was saying, like, are these the only two options? So if you stipulate that, if you restrict the number of options in a certain way, then he might say, well, that's just not part of the hypothetical we're considering. You can't just watch clips and comment later. You have to engage them in a debate. It's the only way to engage. All right. That's the last chat. And I think this is a good time to end the stream after we had one call. I'm glad we had a call. Good to get at least one. And it went on for a while, and maybe he'll come back. He said he might want to chat some more. So I think I'll do another stream this weekend. What I'm thinking now, as I said, I'll do at least 2 a week. These aren't guarantees, but what I'll probably do is one roughly in the middle of the week like this, and then one on the weekends. And maybe I'll do more, maybe less, but that's what I think I'll probably do. Okay. Well, thanks for coming by, everyone. I appreciate your presence. I would appreciate likes if you liked the stream. That will help me out, help promote the channel in the algorithm. And I'd appreciate subscribing if you're not subscribed and you value my content, you want to help this channel grow. Shares, comments also help, any kind of engagement. All right. I'm going to end the stream, and hopefully I'll do it this time without cutting myself off in mid-sentence. But last time when I ended the stream, I ended it in Zoom first. But maybe if I ended on YouTube first this time, and then later close the stream on Zoom, I won't cut myself off in mid-sentence. That's what I'm going to try anyways. All right. Hope you all have a good week, and I will see you hopefully in a future stream. Bye for now.